Hi, I'm Heather from Here Booktubes, and today is sci-fi romance recommendations. These are not alien romance recommendations. I have done those in the past. This is sci-fi, so the main characters live in space. They live in this sci-fi society. It's not a surprise to them. They're not watching Netflix one day and then suddenly know about the existence of aliens that night. That's not what this is, okay? These are all sci-fi romances, and I have been going down a massive rabbit hole. Some of these will predate that rabbit hole, but these are my favorites so far. So these are the ones that I have read and loved. I think that you should read, and if you have read and loved any of these and you know similar books, give me those recommendations, please and thank you. So the very first one is the one that sent me down my sci-fi romance subgenre deep dive. This is all I want to consume thing for the last 6 months or so, and that of course is Rules of Redemption, which is the Firebird Chronicles #1 by T.A. White. We are currently doing a Firebird Chronicles read along on Steph and Novelty Corner's channel, and the first live show is in a couple of weeks, so you can read the first book and then participate in the live show if you would like. This is one that while the love interest is introduced and you do have interactions with them in the first book, you don't get that romance till about book 3 really strongly, but there are 5 books currently out in the series. It is not finished yet, and the romance has been going for a little while at this point. We're in a solid relationship, right? I absolutely love this series. This is a new favorite author for me. If you are a fan of Ilona Andrews like I am, then I think that this writing will really work for you. We have a loner who used to be in the military during the war. They were a, star in the military and really burned themselves out, and they have been presumed to be dead for the last few years. Their crewmates kind of think that they're dead, and they have been scavenging, and they only have a droid as their companion. Right at the beginning of this first book, they're forced to make port at a place that they are familiar with and have tried to avoid, and while trying to stay under the radar and keep their head ducked down, they are put in a position where they can rescue these children from another alien race, or they can continue to keep their head down and not get involved. And of course they choose to save the lives of these children. That puts them on the radar of a rather powerful general. There's the head of the group that these children belong to. They have a diplomatic immunity, and things ratchet up from there. And of course the general is the love interest. Of course. There are so many different things in this series that I absolutely adore. There's a lot of house politics. There's a lot of characters holding things back, being more powerful than they would appear. There's also a lot of extenuating circumstances where they can't keep going on their own regardless of how much they might want to, and there are many secrets revealed, and I absolutely adore it. Cannot wait for book 6. This is like my new favorite series. Then I have Polaris Rising, which is Consortium Rebellion #1 by Jessie Mihalik. This first book is my favorite of their books. I've read 8 of their books now. This first one is my favorite because of the trope and character types that we have in the first book. It's like really my thing. So we have a daughter of a high house. She's basically a princess, but she's a daughter of a high house, very well trained, augmented, all this stuff. So she's a great fighter, great at politics, all of the things. And she has a pretty big bounty on her head because she left home to avoid a political marriage that she did not want, and her father has put a bounty on her head to try and force her back home. This is one where the parents are pretty hands-off / toxic, but the siblings are like the best support system you could ever want in your entire life. I love that. So she is captured by bounty hunters, and she is put in a cell basically with the other person that they have captured that has the highest bounty to date, except for maybe her. And he, is an escape artist. He escapes every time he's captured. He's a very powerful warrior, and they immediately clock each other. And they're like, all right, so we can escape together or separately, whatever works for you. They do end up escaping together, and it is so much fun to watch their romance. Easily my favorite of her books. Honestly, this is just a very fast-paced, very fun romance as they try to outsmart her family, outsmart the bounty hunters, figure everything out. Then, if you are familiar with my channel at all, you will know that I am absolutely obsessed with this romance, and that is Hold by Claire Kent. I've read it multiple times. I'm honestly about to reread it because I just need something that hits. And this is a prison planet romance where they are both humans. Humans don't live on Earth anymore or anything like that. And a prison planet, you have guards, but they don't really police the prisoners, and it's basically survival of the fittest, which is the thing that like really appeals to me. So she is sent there for, you know, basically the crime of trespassing. They have a kind of tyrannical government that pats themselves on the back because they no longer have the death penalty, but any and all offenses get you sent to this prison planet where, I mean, most of you die. They just didn't kill you. So she's there, and a guard on her way in tells her, hey, your only chance at surviving here is if you find a strong prisoner and you give him sex for protection. Otherwise, you're probably not going to make it through like 2 days because you're going to be assaulted a lot, right? So she does that. She's dropped off. She points at this loner guy and was like, yeah, I choose you. And they immediately, binga binga booma, start having sex for protection. And they have a severe lack of communication. And I really like that the dynamic in this is addressed. She feels like she cannot annoy him or anything, or, you know, he could stop protecting her. And he feels like he's losing his mind and is just trying to cling on to the hope of escape. And she's like this bright spot in his time in prison. And she is very afraid he's going to leave her behind when he escapes and everything. So it is kind of dubious consent in a way that works for me because I like consensual non-consent. This one really works for me. I absolutely love them. He is silent. He is the grumpy, quiet type. So, you know, you never get his perspective, and you are dealing with her not getting a lot of communication from him, but in a way that works for me. Works for me very, very well. This is my favorite. It just is. But it is definitely on the steamier side. Then I have Perdition, which is Dred Chronicles #1 by Anna Aguirre. This is a prison ship, and she is a longtime prisoner, and she is a head of a faction and has a territory there in the prison. This is again one where there are no guards, and you have these different territories. She is the Dread Queen. She is head of one. She has some counselors. You have all these different like alliances within her territory, but she is the ruler of the territory, and a new guy comes to the prison, and he is basically indestructible, and they have a romance. And what I really like about this trilogy is the plot rapidly changes at the beginning of each and every book. So while they're in this prison ship, it could be quite repetitive, right? Same thing happening over and over again. Instead, you have a pretty massive shift at the beginning of each book that allows each one to be completely different from the one before it, while still in similar circumstances because you're in this prison ship. And I really like that she is powerful and that she gets a love interest that can keep up with her in power and in, you know, being worthy of her. This one is quite dark. It was not too dark for me, right there on the edge. I think that some of the things that are really dark in this maybe don't come off as dark as they could, but it is definitely a dark one. Then I have Iron Widow by Zhao, and this is a blend of historical and fantasy and sci-fi. This is based on the real life only female emperor of China, and this is a love triangle, and you have giant mechs and things like that, so definitely sci-fi elements. Our main character, her feet are bound, so she is disabled with that. And in a lot of pain every single day because of that. If you are not familiar with that, it's pretty horrific. But this is a very misogynistic society, and these are very, very morally gray characters, which is my favorite type of thing. She is hellbent on revenge, and she is not going to let anyone or anything stand in her way, and certainly not feeling bad for people. That's not going to do it. So her sister is killed. Her sister is sent as a female pilot for these mechs, and the female pilots die at a very high rate while the male pilots do not. So her sister is killed before even becoming a pilot, so she decides to become a pilot and goes to get revenge for her sister's death. And she has a childhood friend who is very rich and is trying to stop this, and she's like, yeah, no, don't get in my way, buddy. So she goes and things happen and she pisses people off, and so kind of as her punishment, she is then forced to partner up with this murderous prisoner but slash best pilot in the land, right? And they are fighting these aliens. And it's a love triangle between her murderous partner, and her childhood best friend. And one of my favorite things about this book is that she is not going to be emotionally manipulated into letting people off the hook for what they did. She's like, yeah, no, you can die, actually. And I love that. Now, I've not read the sequel that came out in December, and I've heard some kind of mixed things on that, but nonetheless, this first book is great, and I do still plan on reading book 2. Then I have Clean Sweep, which is Innkeeper Chronicles #1 by Ilona. If you are familiar with my channel, then this should not really come as a surprise to you. So basically we have Dinah, and she is an innkeeper, and she's an innkeeper for the intergalactic. So while her inn is here on Earth, it's actually in Texas, and she lives, you know, in a quiet human neighborhood. Humans don't know about aliens or anything, so the job of innkeepers is to offer a stopping point for aliens, especially because of Earth's location in the universe, if you will. However, they also cannot allow humans to find out. So she has a romance with a werewolf who doesn't really know his origins, and there's also a vampire, a space vampire, and there's this alien that is killing dogs in her neighborhood and is escalating and is kind of after the vampire, and she has to try and prevent all of the humans from finding out about it while also trying to defeat it, and it kind of goes from there. The romance, again, is not as prevalent as many of the books that I recommend, however, is definitely there. It is a focus of the series. This is, of course, one of my all-time favorites. And also, additionally, the first book has been made into graphic novels, or you can read it for free on the Tapas app, if that is your preference, but I really like the visuals of those. Then I have Full Speed to a Crash Landing, which is Chaotic Orbits #1 by Beth Revis. This is a scavenger who comes on a ship, and the government is involved in this retrieval, this crash ship, and she is kind of doing her own agenda, but while trying to work with the government representative, and they have a romance, and she is trying to get what she needs, and he is trying to get what he needs, while having kind of the ultimate same end goal, but via very different paths. And so they are not only going head to head, but also are really into each other. And this is a delight from beginning to end. Also, these books are only about 200 pages. Each is a trilogy. I have read an arc of the third book, even though it's not out yet for you. Excellent. Some of my favorite types of characters. The banter is bantering, the humor is humoring, the plot is plotting, character interactions are delightful. Then I have Fury, which is New Species #1 by Laurann Dohner. This was like my old sci-fi romance. This one is a species, new species, but they are created in a lab. The labs were obviously pretty horrific, pretty abusive, and were funded by the US government. And when that becomes public due to the actions of the heroine in the first book, the public outrage is enough that the government provides reparations, which is a joke in and of itself. But anyways, they do, and the new species have like their own territory within the US borders basically, and are allowed diplomatic immunity and all of this stuff, right? And yeah, they have fated mates. They are giant alpha cinnamon roll, worship their mate, fiercely devoted, sweet, giant paranormals. They're not shifters, but they are all animalistic. Again, they don't shift. They're just a mix between human and animal. Okay. And yeah, I read many, many, many books in this series back in the day and absolutely loved it. And then lastly, I am going to give you one more Ilona Andrews book. And this is a novella and is the only book on Kindle Unlimited, I believe. And this is Faded Blades. It's about 180 pages, I want to say. Could be wrong, could be lying to you. Don't care either way. It's great. I absolutely love this. You can read it as a standalone. It is technically the third book in a series, but the first two books are like weird, tiny little shorts. And this one is definitely my favorite. This is everything I ever wanted. What do you want from me? I love this. I love this setup. So basically you have two pretty powerful magic users, even though it's not really magic, and they are each the head of their house, and their houses are enemies. So they've literally never met. They are kept away from each other in society, but they don't really have any animosity towards each other. They don't know each other. It's just their houses have always been enemies, and it's, you know, not like a blood feud, but also goes back a long time. And they are in a race to develop this technology that will, you know, put one of the houses on top, and it's the two of them and a third house as well in this race. And they are both married to other people, and those other people have an affair together and steal their technology info, right? So now the two main characters, the two heads of houses, are going to work together to get their cheating, no good, lying spouses. They don't really care about the spouses themselves because they were not love matches and betrayal. So, you know, screw them. However, they need the info that they stole or they're going to lose this race, right? So they are forced into an allyship, turn friends, turn lovers, and it's so good because they really understand each other and they are not going to let the politics between their houses get in their way. And also their spouses kind of really underestimate them. They forget that they're the most dangerous people in the planet because they were loved and cared for. Now they betrayed them, and they're going to see, you know, kind of the sharp edges that they had blunted out of a desire for domestic bliss. And I love revenge. I do. I am a vengeful person. So that's it. Those are my sci-fi romance recs. Let me know if you have read or want to read any of these, and if you have similar recommendations for me. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.